Jack, she thought she was being discreet, but she had no idea that I'd been tipped off by a colleague who was pretty shocked by what was going on. I made my plans and got ready. Luckily, I had time to manage my anger and prepare for what was about to happen. It was all about to kick off. Right after dinner, I'll go to Kayla's, then Mary's. I'm finally going to do it. I'll wait until after dinner, hand him a beer, and then I'll fill you in on what happens. Just remember to stay strong. He won't like it, but you have to remain firm. I'll keep that in mind, just as we discussed. He doesn't have a choice. This is how it's going to be. If he truly loves me, he'll let me do this for my happiness. That's right. Just be prepared for him to yell and scream. He'll resist, but eventually he'll come to his senses and accept the new reality. It's crucial that you stay calm but firm. Let him have his moment. He'll have a little tantrum, but then he'll realize that you're in charge. Besides, as far as he knows, this will only be temporary. Once he accepts it, he'll start to enjoy it, and then it'll just keep going. Are you sure about all this? Jack can be very stubborn. Look, Kayla, Jack loves you more than anything in the world. He will get over it. He'll get over it. When he calms down, he'll realize that he loves you so much that he'll do anything to make you happy. I think you're the expert, so I trust you. I messed up 2 marriages, but I perfected the method on my 3rd marriage. You've met my current husband. He is now completely under my control. When I'm with someone else, he even stands next to the bed. Sometimes I also have him clean up afterwards. In a month or so, another Jack will get in line. Then you can be sure of the security of your marriage to Jack as well as the pleasure of several other men. I finished the day and went home. I went home to cook Jack's favorite dinner. When Jack came home, he greeted me with the words, "I love you," and kissed me on the cheek. Despite my best efforts, I was still nervous. This was going to be a significant step and change in our marriage, but it was all worth it. Mary had been telling me about her feminine. I've been involved in the marriage ministry for quite some time now, and I've seen it work for her and her husband. He was really happy with how their marriage turned out, so I'm sure Jack would love it too. We had a nice chat over dinner. We exchanged stories from the previous day and discussed some of the day's news. It was a laid back. After dinner, I suggested he grab a beer and relax while I cleaned up. He was reluctant at first, wanting to help, but I told him it wasn't much and I could handle it. I stored the leftovers and put the dishes in the dishwasher. It was then time for me to pour myself a glass of wine. I mentally prepared myself and headed into the living room. I said, "Jack, we need to talk." "Okay, what is it?" "It's not going to bother you, which is good. We've discussed having kids and I'm almost ready for that. But there are a couple of other things I need to do first. It should take a couple of months at most, then we can start working on having kids." "That's great. So, what are those things you need to do here?" I took a deep breath, preparing for the, "Jack, I just need to look into it a bit more before I make up my mind. It'll only be temporary, and then I'll be the best wife and mother to our children." "That sounds reasonable to me. So far, so good." "But how are you planning to go about it?" "He's handling it well. I expected him to freak out. I'll be seeing other men. We'll still have sex regularly, but I'll also have sex with other guys to clear my head. Just remember, it's only sex with them. You're the only one who has my love. I'll be back with you in a couple of months as your faithful wife, and then we can start trying for the kids we've planned." "Kayla, you don't seem... I'm not sure I should be asking for your permission, given that you've already made up your mind. I'd like to go on record as saying that I'm not in favor of it. If you're asking for my permission, I'm not going to give it. However, you're a grown woman, so I won't stop you if you think it's necessary." Things were going better than I imagined. He didn't raise his voice or say anything aggressive. He spoke in a calm, conversational manner. "Mary, Jack will accept the new role I'm preparing him for. So Kayla, how will this work? Are you moving out, or do you expect me to? Are you bringing them here or going to their place or a hotel? We're both going to keep living here. We're married, and as I said, we'll keep making love. The other guys will just be having sex. It'll just be making love. I might go to them or bring them here. In those cases, you'll have to sleep in the spare bedroom. I don't see the need for a hotel room since we could just stay here again. I'm not in favor, but we shouldn't have sex during this time. I won't risk catching any STDs. Once you're done, we'll wait until you're tested and cleared. Have fun, don't worry about me." Well, Jack, I have to say I'm a bit disappointed. I love you and enjoy our lovemaking, but I understand your concern. I'll just have to live with it. "That's great, honey. So, when do you plan to start your little flings?" Well, Mary and I decided to hit a club and meet a couple of guys from work tomorrow night. I'm not sure if I might bring one of them back for the night since you're not going to have sex with me while I'm doing it anyway. Maybe it would be best if you just move into a spare room for the next couple of months. Okay, Kayla, don't worry about it. I'll take care of moving in by the time you get home tomorrow night, Jack said before. I went back to reading the paper and was amazed at how mature he was about it. My heart soared. He grumbled a bit and refused to have sex, but he was totally accepting of everything. He wasn't even angry. Mary was right. In 2 months, Jack would be under my control. Besides, I knew this was the last time we'd have sex. It was only a temporary arrangement, and in a week or two he'd be back in my bed. I would just use the Venel wrench to get him to fully embrace his new role as my submissive little hubby. Hi Mary, it's Kayla. How did it go last night? Jack was really mature about everything. I expected him to go nuclear, but he didn't. He didn't raise his voice at all. He was just so calm and accepting of it all. That's great. I told you he'd comply. Do you think you could convince him to watch tonight? I doubt it. In fact, I don't think I'll even suggest it. He said he'd refuse to have sex with me while I'm with someone else. I'm sure that won't last long after a week or two of using. His hands on the knowledge that he has a gorgeous woman on his side. He'll be back before long. It'll be great to see him again, as he refused to touch me. I just asked him to move to the spare room. He's packing his things now. He promised me that he would completely move out of the owner's bedroom before I came home tonight. I love that you changed the name. From master bedroom to owner's bedroom. I'm going to have to start doing that myself. I should probably get ready. I'll meet you at the club. Later that night, Jack had made good progress on boxing up all the stuff from my bedroom. I wasn't sure why he needed to pack so much when he could just carry armfuls. He said he'd put the stuff down the hall, but it'd be less walking and he could go through everything and leave the things he really didn't need in boxes to get rid of. I guess that made some sense, but I was too busy getting ready to pay attention. He did say how seductive I looked in my underwear, garter belt, stockings, and 5-inch heels. In loafers, he didn't say anything when I wore the little red cocktail dress I got for our 5th anniversary last year. That was actually the only time I wore it, but I looked pretty good in it. I told Jack I was going out and expected to return around 1. I'll be out until 1 a.m. I told him he didn't need to wait for me as I might not be alone. Then I picked up my clutch and left. He said not to worry and that he'd moved out by the time I returned. He closed the last box as I left the house. I felt uneasy, but I couldn't quite identify why. I chose to ignore it and focus on the night ahead. I was looking forward to the night at the club, and I ran into Mary, Larry, and Josh, the account managers who were known for their looks and reputed endowment. Mary and some of the other office girls said that Jack was moderately endowed, but I was intrigued by the thought of experiencing a considerably larger member. I also liked the idea that they knew how to use their assets effectively. Mary asked about Jack's move to the spare bedroom when our first order arrived. I could confirm that he had completed packing and that he'd be entirely moved out by the time I returned. When I shared this information, Josh asked if Jack had indeed made such a statement. I remembered Jack's words when I mentioned my expected return time, and our group burst into laughter at the remark. Larry was also very amused. He was disappointed that Jack had moved out because he was hoping to involve him in the social side of things. I joked that maybe we could think about that after some persuasion while we were chatting. I noticed that neither Larry nor Josh had invited him to dance for several hours. We danced and had drinks. I danced with both of them a few times, especially during slow songs where we hugged and felt their erections against me. Throughout the night, their hands stayed on my backside. Later on, Mary and I took a break and went to the ladies' room to talk about how the night was going to end. We decided the outcome of the ride home through 3 rounds of rock, paper, scissors, which meant I was driving Josh and Mary was going with Larry. When I got to the house, I led Josh through the front door and noticed it was dark inside. I figured Jack had gone to bed by then. I told myself that everything was fine anyway, so I didn't need him watching. I led him to my room. Jack's stuff was gone, but I could reward him with a hand job later. For now, I had other things to do. It didn't take us long to undress, but Josh wanted me to keep the G-string and stockings on. I'd lost my thong a couple of hours ago. I didn't know if it was Larry's or Josh's, but it didn't matter. I made enough money to buy others. The next 2 hours were sheer bliss. We started in the start position, then switched to another to avoid. We finished that round with Cowgirl after a quick break. I liked it when he spanked my ass while I rode him. I might let Jack do it on his birthday or our anniversary, but I wouldn't do it again. I'd save it for my other lovers. We ended up in the shower before going to bed, and again when we woke up the next morning. After that, Josh had to leave for his wife and kids, so I put on my robe and went to get some coffee. I felt a bit let down that Jack hadn't brewed coffee yet, considering it was already past 9. Normally he'd be up for an hour by now. I'll mention it to him later. Would it hurt him to make me coffee and breakfast? I stayed up late, so I'm sure he could find the time. I was going to offer him my handiwork as a reward for moving into the spare bedroom while I was away. After breakfast, I headed to the shower and got dressed. The warm water did wonders for soothing my sore muscles. I had no plans for the day, so I opted for my old shorts and a t-shirt. I was only going to be around Jack, so I wore a functional bra and an old pair of regular underwear. Just as I finished tying my hair into a ponytail, the phone rang. "Hey, girlfriend?" It was Mary. She was really sweet, and I could tell she was trying to seduce me. "So how was Josh last night?" "He was amazing. It was exactly as I thought it would be." Speaking of Jack, what was his reaction this morning? "I don't know. I was a little disappointed because he seems to be asleep. I was disappointed that he didn't make me breakfast and coffee this morning. I think it's time to move the job to the spare room, but now I don't think so. Yes, make sure he knows how disappointed you are and what you expect from this moment. Continue to be assertive with him, but also give him positive reinforcement when he does something well. This will encourage him to try harder. I'm starting to get frustrated that he still hasn't gotten up." I walked down the hall to his room and knocked on the door. I went down the hall to the spare bedroom and knocked on the door, shouting his name. There was no response. I tried again, but still nothing. I turned the knob and opened the door. Oh no, I thought. "What's wrong?" Mary asked on the phone. "Jack isn't in the spare bedroom. His clothes aren't even in the closet." "Wait," I said, running through the house. "His truck is gone. So are all his tools." That's when I realized what was going on. Jack had moved out. "Oh no," I thought. "What is it?" Mary asked. "Jack has moved out," I realized. I'd understood him to say he'd move his stuff into the spare room, not out of my room. Then he said he'd move in before I returned. I'd assumed he meant he'd move out of my room, but he'd meant the whole house. I needed to call him and find out where he'd gone. No, I thought. This is the wrong approach. It makes you look weak. Stay strong. Don't contact him. Let him contact you. I know what I'm talking about. He's just having a little tantrum. In a couple of days, he'll come crawling back to you. This is actually a very good thing. Now you have a reason to punish him and make him beg to do something for you. It speeds up the process. You could even let Josh or Larry knock you up and make Jack, "I need you to raise the baby." Are you sure about that? I'm sure. Look at what my husband does for me. Well, I have to admit you've been right so far. Of course I am. Oh, and Larry wants to meet you in the supply closet at work for an hour on Monday. Can we really get away with that? Sure. At least half the girls are doing it. It's so bad I have to do it on a schedule. I'll email you the meeting time. Just put it down as an appointment somewhere else. Don't worry about it. The boss never goes there, and everyone who needs something there knows to ask me before going to get something. We chatted for a bit longer before ending the call. I have to admit I felt a bit uneasy about Jack's move despite my actions. I genuinely love him and see myself spending my life with him. Mary's portrayal of a feminine lifestyle sounded appealing, offering me the chance to explore. Eventually, I'll probably move on from other relationships, but Jack will always be my devoted and submissive spouse. In a few years, I might ask Jack to let me tie him down in exchange for ceasing involvement with other men. Of course, this will only happen when I'm ready to give it up, and he doesn't need to know that. I could use binding as a condition for his return, but I'd need to consider that regardless. I needed to recover from the previous night and brace myself for a demanding day at work tomorrow. I just put it out of my mind, prepared a simple dinner, enjoyed a glass of wine, and went to bed. Throughout the week, there was no word from Jack. Mary assured me it wasn't entirely unexpected and predicted he would contact me soon. The longer he stayed away, the more conditions I could establish for his return. This week I'd been meeting Larry and Josh, a couple of other attractive guys in the pantry every day, with a double team session with Larry and Josh scheduled for this afternoon on Friday morning during our break around the coffee machine. Larry, Josh, Mary, and I were chatting when a professionally dressed woman approached and asked if we were Kayla Adams, Mary Morgan, Josh Johnson, and Larry Jones. After we introduced ourselves, she handed each of us an envelope. She quickly took pictures with a small digital camera and said that we had all been served. Then she went towards our boss's office. I called after her, asking what it was about. She said in a sweet southern voice that she was paid to distribute them as a joke, not to read them. She went into the boss's office without knocking. Less than a minute later, she cheerfully left the building, wishing us a good day. We opened our envelopes and saw that we were being sued for divorce. I was so shocked I couldn't move. Josh and Larry's phones rang shortly after their wives received proof of their infidelity. Their belongings were about to be thrown out and they were to take turns sleeping. Our boss was really angry and came into the office yelling. He called for Adams, Morgan, Johnson, and Jones to come into his office immediately. As we walked past him with bowed heads and entered his office, I could feel a sense of foreboding. Once inside, he conveyed his discontent, emphasizing that the situation was beyond just bad. He demanded an explanation while waving a manila envelope, but none of us dared to speak. He told us the company was facing a lawsuit for not following the moral code in the employee handbook. He asked if any of us could understand why the company was being sued. We couldn't answer, so he explained the situation. He said the lawsuit was about allegations against Mrs. Adams, Mr. Jones, and Mr. Johnson for inappropriate conduct. While Mrs. Jones Morgan was accused of turning the storage room into a company brothel, he asked us to deny these allegations and said he wanted to know if any of these incidents occurred during business hours or on company property. When we didn't respond, he expressed frustration and criticized our actions, saying that the court order prevented him from firing us until the case was settled. He then instructed us to leave his office until he managed to deal with the situation, so we left his office and went to our room. After that, my job got a lot harder, but I was grateful to still have a job. I decided to look at the divorce papers and found they were pretty severe, with images, videos, audio recordings, and even notarized letters. An hour later, a company-wide email arrived from the boss, addressing all employees. Management had found out that employees had been planning and carrying out actions that went against the moral code of conduct set out in the employee handbook during work hours and on company property. As there was a good chance that this was happening more widely than had been documented, they decided to take action. They announced that all employees had to familiarize themselves with the code of morals in the employee handbook. An online class would be developed over the weekend, and all employees must complete this by the following Friday. Security will be checking all secluded areas throughout the day until permanent cameras are installed. The storage room will be locked, and the key held by the security supervisor. Any necessary supplies must be brought in with a security escort. The security supervisor will monitor computer use to prevent personal use of company assets. Prohibited activities include scheduling non-meetings with co-workers or others, browsing non-work websites, and texting on company. Computers should be kept to a minimum. Socializing with co-workers should be confined to the break room during scheduled breaks and lunch periods. Security personnel would roam the building to monitor compliance, and the names of those responsible for the actions would not be disclosed. After work, the other three of us met at a bar across the street. We sat at a small table in the corner and faced disapproving looks from other co-workers. At least we still have work to do, for now. That was very nice of him. Why do you think, Jack? I asked about including that in the court order. Josh dismissed it, suggesting that Jack wasn't trying to cause minimal damage, but rather intended to inflict more pain. I sought clarification, and Josh explained the reference to alimony. He mentioned that while infidelity was the current reason for the divorce, having a stable job and income could prevent a judge from awarding alimony. If you've got a job and income, there's less chance of a judge awarding you alimony. He also warned about the risk of losing your job and not being able to find another one, which could make a judge more likely to order you to pay financial support. His advice was to stay at the job until the divorce was final. Larry brought up a scenario after the divorce, where if all four of us were laid off, there'd be no alimony and no job. Josh said that in that case, he'd resign on Monday. He made a joke about being a natural blonde, implying that resigning voluntarily could have legal consequences. He explained that resigning after filing for divorce might be seen as an attempt to receive support from the ex-spouse, which could lead to negative judgments from a judge. He recommended holding on to the job and saving money. Josh expressed concern about our situations, emphasizing that their wives might receive alimony and child support because they have kids. He thought about what would happen if they got laid off, because alimony and child support are based on income when you get divorced. It didn't sound good. I knew what could happen, so I felt I had to talk to Jack and try to sort things out, even though I wanted to help my friends. The thought of losing my husband made me think about what's important to me. I thought about what I'd said and decided that if I had to choose between my marriage and my friendships, I'd do whatever it took to save my marriage. I quickly got my phone and saw that the number I was trying to call didn't accept calls from my number. I was frustrated, so I asked Mary for her phone because Jack had blocked mine, and I needed to talk about the storm. I tried calling him on Mary's phone and got the same message, so I figured he'd blocked her number too. When I suggested trying Larry's phone, I hesitated, worried about the consequences of calling my husband from a friend's phone. I knew it was hard to reach him by phone. I felt panicky, thinking Jack had blocked all my numbers. I figured he'd blocked my home and work phones too, so I knew talking on the phone wasn't going to be effective. I decided to track him down in person. I was more concerned about finding him and addressing the situation face to face than I was about what people would think. I was reflecting on how my perspective had changed. I realized that just that morning, I'd been thinking about making Jack beg. I picked up my phone and started going through my contacts. Sure enough, at least one of his friends knows where I can find him. Spoiler, none of our mutual friends knew anything. Well, that wasn't exactly true. None of the previous mutual friends who remained friends with. I knew that my numerous mutual friends who now hated me knew enough, but unfortunately, while they had no objections to letting me know, they were definitely not going to reveal that information to me. I was met with laughter when I asked if they'd give him a message from me. I had just finished my last call and fourth drink, and I was feeling pretty dejected. That's when Josh showed his intelligence. Yes, it was said sarcastically. Maybe it was just my mood or the result of the differences between how a woman thinks and how a man thinks. Perhaps some of you will think that what Josh suggested was really brilliant. I don't think so. Well, Josh began, since our lives are already messed up, why don't we go to Kayla and spend the whole night as a couple? We've already been intimate, so we can take advantage of that. And have a night of passion. That might have been logical for him, but I just got a big dose of common sense. Of course, if there's nothing left to lose, there might be something to think about. Personally, I think Jack and I still have a tiny chance, but that chance would evaporate faster than a drop of water on the surface of the sun if I took everyone into the house and had a late-night gathering. I politely declined and offered to let Mary take them home. I had a husband I was trying to get back. I tried everything to find Jack on weekends. I drove around motel parking lots for hours looking for his truck. I drove past all his friends' houses at different times to see if his truck was there. I even tried to follow his best friend when I saw him leaving his house, hoping he would go to where Jack was nowhere to be seen. Monday morning, I parked across the street from his office. Everyone came in, but Jack never showed up. I waited another hour, but still nothing. I was already late for work, but I didn't care. I got out of the car and headed for the office. I saw that the door to Jack's office was closed. I went to Jack's office, but it was closed. I asked the receptionist if Jack was there, but she said he'd gone for 2 weeks. I walked in 2 hours late, and the boss gave me an angry look. I didn't care. All the phones I could have used were blocked, his friends wouldn't help, and I couldn't get a message to him at work. I don't even know where he is, so I can't show up on his doorstep. Mail isn't an option because I have no idea where to send it. What are my options? I can always email him. He always checks email, so I just have to hope he doesn't block my emails. No problem with attempting Jack. No excuses. I won't waste time trying to provide one. I've contracted the fool's disease. My decision. I won't blame Mary. It was wonderful hearing her talk about women's marriages. I have no idea why I thought there was a chance you'd accept. I should have known better. Sorry for the wake-up call, but now I'm awake. I want you to know I'm embarrassed and regret my actions. I understand you may not accept it, Jack. Despite my recent actions, I truly love you, and I'm sorry for what I did. You did nothing wrong. It was me being an idiot and selfish. My love, I beg you to forgive me. I need to come back, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I've realized the foolishness of trying to create FM, but I'd be thrilled to be part of MLF. Yes, Jack, I'm giving you my soul and you're just giving me orders. I'll literally do anything to get back to where I belong with you. I know the definition of anything. Please, Jack. I'm offering you anything, despite no interest in women. I do things for you. Serve you and friends at a Super Bowl party in only a garter belt. Stockings and high heels if it helps me get back to you. If you want me to do something, just tell me to bend over the nearest chair, even if someone's watching. Spank my buttocks with a leather belt. Tell me when and where I'll bring the belt. I don't trust you, but I'll put on a chastity belt and give you the keys as a condition for my return. Had blood drawn for an STD test results in a couple of days? Tell me. Just let me know where to send them and I'll get them to you, Jack. No matter what happens, you're the best person I've known. I know you'd never intentionally hurt me, even though I probably deserve it. I accept it all. I'm not asking you to forget or trust me again. I'm just asking for the opportunity to be yours in any capacity you desire. I ask for nothing more than to come back to you forever, even if I have to agree to a divorce, or, I hope it doesn't happen, but I know it's not my decision. I messed up, and I understand that you might want to even the score with Goose Goosey. What about Mary, Larry, and the lawsuit against my company? Mary manipulated me into agreeing to this plan, and Josh and Larry took advantage. As you know, I'll be fired once the lawsuit is settled. It's all our fault. Do what you want with them. I'll help if you want. After all, I'm your willing slave from now on. Your loving slave, Kayla. Fortunately, Jack hasn't blocked my email yet. Even more surprisingly, he actually read it. No, he didn't. I guess I should have known he wouldn't take my word for it. After all, I'd already broken the biggest vow I'd ever made, the one about leaving everyone else behind. Since I'd broken that promise, what could make him think I wouldn't break any other promises? All I could do was prove it to him one action at a time. 2 years had passed since I sent that letter. Josh and Larry had a tough time in their divorces, and all 4 of us were let go the day after the lawsuit against the company was settled. Eventually, Josh and Larry found lower-paying jobs and moved into a small apartment in a rough neighborhood. Their social lives suffered, and their ex-wives' wives turned the kids against their ex-husbands. I realized both women are now in better relationships. It's now my turn. I'm currently kneeling undressed beside the bed, wearing a chastity belt while Jack finishes. This is my penance. I detailed all of this in a letter. Jack wanted to test me to see if I would honor those words if I wanted him back. I don't really have a choice. It was a tough 6 months, but eventually he eased up a bit. He still makes me do it sometimes, like now, but it's improved. He only brings other women home once every 2 months. After getting fired, I stopped working. Jack got a promotion and we managed just fine without my income. I stay home taking care of our 2 kids. A year. I'm usually undressed when the kids are around, but Jack said I should start wearing clothes at home again. They're getting old enough that it feels weird otherwise. Right now, I only wear clothes when leaving the house or when we have guests. I still answer the door undressed for deliveries. I've had laser hair removal, so I now have a permanent landing strip over my genitals. This makes it impossible to hide my Jack tattoo on the right side of the band and Jack tattoo on the left side. Every week, Jack updates the 5 red stripes on my buttocks with a leather strap. He removes them right after the 5th stroke. My plug engages me back as I lean over the couch. I'm not perfect. Sometimes there are more stripes on my buttocks or chest when I mess up, but I genuinely enjoy it. Who knew the sting of a strap-on could cause a bond? Well, she's still married. True, she got fired as well, but no one anticipated her. Facing any significant consequences, her husband seemed entirely submissive to her whims. She'd easily find another job and life would continue as normal. Life isn't always fair. In fact, it is. Harold wasn't the submissive loser everyone believed. Once he gathered evidence, he got really angry. I thought I had it tough. It took 6 months, but compared to what she'd been through, it was a walk in the park. He served her with divorce papers while putting Mary through hell. He quietly liquidated all their assets and safeguarded them. He gave her the house after refinancing it and taking all the equity, then vanished. She lost the house and all the money disappeared. She found another job, but for half the salary she used to earn. She also has a tarnished reputation. She isn't dating at the moment. With another month of antibiotics ahead, you might be wondering why I put up with this or laugh at my fate. If you're upset because Jack didn't leave me stranded, I'm grateful he didn't, even though I deserved it. I put up with it because I can't imagine being without the love of my life. Yes, Jack whips and humiliates me, but he still loves me. He has other women, but never without me. I can leave any time, and Jack showed me divorce papers where I turned down the offer. Heck is a great dad, lover, and husband. I don't need anything else. I got so caught up in the idea of women's marriages that I lost sight of what truly matters. Instead of being content in an equal relationship, I became subservient to my husband. It wasn't my intention, but I'm